Sirens. Files stamped years before witnesses even existed. Transmissions logged long before trials ever began. Daniel Cho thought he was stepping into protection. Instead, he walked straight into the Hollow's waiting room. This is Unheard Evidence, where the facts speak louder than the silence meant to bury them. Tonight, we're pulling back the cover on transmissions that shouldn't exist, a witness marked for elimination before she ever testified, and a system so compromised even the truth arrives years too early. The Hollow isn't chasing Daniel. It's writing his story in advance, and the file is already open. The sirens pressed in like a tide. Daniel Cho stood in the fractured spill of streetlight, half-shadowed, half-exposed, every breath weighing like evidence that hadn't been logged. His pulse thumped in the hollow of his throat as the squad cars swarmed. Their red and blue reflections tore across the brick facades like jagged cuts, hemming him, Rourke, and Ashe into a box that felt smaller with every flashing cycle. Rourke's voice was low, steady, pitched for the space between wailing sirens. "Daniel, you need to decide. Right now." Ashe leaned against the open door of the unmarked sedan, eyes glossy from exhaustion, skin pale beneath the sodium glow. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Every fiber of her said what Daniel didn't want to face. They were out of time. The choice had been circling him for hours, maybe days. Whether to vanish, stay underground, go through another maze of back roads, pulling Ashe into a deeper shadow where the Hollow's reach might stretch thinner, or to trust Rourke and step into the official channel, with all the scrutiny, the bureaucracy, the cameras that could either protect them or catalog their erasure. The sirens rose into a converging wail, closing from 3 streets at once. Tires screeched against wet pavement. Doors slammed. Orders barked. Daniel clenched his jaw and chose. "Fine," he said, loud enough for Rourke but no one else. "We go your way." Rourke gave a single curt nod. Relief? Maybe resignation. Hard to tell. Within seconds, they were swallowed. Black SUVs rolled in behind the cruisers, their lights muted but their presence louder than the sirens. Doors opened in unison. Men and women in dark windbreakers stepped out, their insignias indistinct in the blur, stitched patches with no names. The air shifted, no longer the staccato rhythm of local cops, but something heavier, colder, systemic. The federal task force. Daniel's gut tightened as they were corralled, not arrested, not quite free, ushered with clipped orders and non-negotiable hand gestures toward the SUVs. Ashe shivered once, her eyes darting to him. He gave her the smallest nod he could manage. "Stay with me." Inside the vehicle, the air smelled like static and upholstery cleaner. Windows tinted so dark the world outside fell away. Daniel pressed his palm to his knee to keep it still. Across from him, Ashe clasped her hand together, knuckles white. Rourke sat beside her, shoulders squared, jaw fixed forward like a man betting everything on the rules of a game that had already changed. The convoy pulled out. Sirens receded. The silence was worse. They arrived at a facility Daniel didn't recognize. Not a courthouse. Not a federal building he'd seen in his years with the state police. A warehouse reproposed. Sodium floods on perimeter. High fencing topped with triple coil razor wire. Inside, the air was refrigerated, echoing. They were moved through hallways too clean, too sterile, where the floors reflected every overhead bulb. No one spoke names. Not theirs, not the agents. Clipboards carried codes. Rooms marked with stenciled numbers, not words. Daniel tracked details out of habit. Exits, cameras, door locks, the rhythm of their escort steps. Every angle was a containment strategy. Every corridor, a funnel. They were placed in an interview suite. Not a box, too large for that, but windowless, with a metal table, 3 chairs, and a camera fixed high in the corner, its red diode burning steady. "Sit," an agent said. He didn't wait for compliance. He closed the door behind them with a hydraulic sigh. Daniel sat today. Ashe lowered herself into the chair opposite him. Rourke leaned on the table, eyes following the red diode. For 10 minutes, no one came. The silence cut deeper than interrogation. The first sign came small. On the table, someone had left a file folder. Daniel flipped it open, scanning the top sheet. His chest tightened. Recorder serial analysis. 3 serial numbers listed. All 3 matched the units he and Ashe had recovered, The ones Doyle had hidden, the ones Daniel had cataloged in his notes but had not, under any circumstance, disclosed to anyone outside this room. The timestamp in the header read filed, 8:17 a.m., hours before they had even been taken into custody. Daniel's throat dried. He slid the page toward Rourke. "You give this up?" Rourke's eyes flicked over the sheet. His brows knit, but his expression didn't shift beyond that. "No, I didn't." Ashe leaned forward, reading the numbers like they might dissolve if she blinked. "How do they—" The door opened. 2 agents entered. One carried a laptop, the other a tablet. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't explain. They placed the laptop on the table, turned it toward Daniel. A playback file blinked on screen. Title bar, recovered transmission, Willow Creek. Daniel's lungs froze. They hit play. The speaker crackled. White noise, distant. Then a voice. Sometimes a trail doesn't go cold. Sometimes the people who own it freeze it on purpose. Daniel recognized it, word for word. The line Leah Parker had spoken to him, on a call no one was supposed to have, a call the Hollow had erased. Except here it was logged, cataloged, time-stamped, filed 2009, 3 years before the Willow Creek case went to trial. Daniel shut the laptop with a snap. His pulse slammed. He forced his voice low, controlled. Where did this come from? The agent with the tablet only said, Task Force Holdings. No elaboration. Rourke shot Daniel a look, 1 part warning, 1 part plea. Don't push here. But Daniel couldn't stop. The ground was sliding out from under him, and every instinct screamed to find the edge before they all went under. Task Force Holdings don't include transmissions that never went through dispatch. Unless, his word snagged. He saw Ashe's eyes widening, mirroring his own realization. Unless the Hollow was inside the system itself. Not just freezing trails in local precincts, not just slipping evidence in and out of rural case files. They had a hook in the federal architecture. They had been feeding the pipeline for years. The second agent finally spoke, voice flat. We have a question for you, Cho, about what you've been told, about who you've been speaking to. Daniel leaned back. He saw Ashe's reflection in the dark of the blank laptop screen, pale and rigid. He saw Rourke's jaw harden, the crack spiderwebbing through his faith in the system he'd thrown them into. Daniel swallowed hard. His choice was echoing already, reverberating off the sterile walls. He thought he'd stepped toward safety. Instead, he'd walked into the Hollow's waiting room. And then, the final fracture. The agent with the tablet pulled up another file. Ashe's name at the top. Ashe, Morgan, Witness Elimination Protocol. Filed. Stamped. Logged. Not today. Not last week. Filed 3 years ago. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Ashe saw it too. Her breath caught. The camera diode blinked steady, recording every twitch, every flinch. A silent witness to the fact that they weren't under protection. They were already inside the erasure process. Daniel's hand curled into a fist under the table, knuckles cracking in the cold fluorescent light. The choice had been made. But it wasn't his anymore. Daniel Cho's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not visibly. He'd trained himself better than that, but the tremor lived under his skin, in the marrow, in the beat that kept time with the fluorescent hum above him. Across the table, Ashe hadn't moved since she saw her name stamped into that folder. Witness Elimination Protocol. Filed years before she'd ever even spoken to Daniel, years before she'd stumbled into this maze of transmissions and erased calls. It was as though her entire life had been a waiting room. Daniel forced himself to breathe. Slow, steady, because the truth was too sharp to process all at once. They hadn't stumbled into the Hollow. They'd been pulled. The agent shut the folder like a coffin lid. We'll begin with your statement. Daniel didn't answer. He looked at Rourke. The man wouldn't meet his eyes. His stare stayed fixed on the table, jaw tight, teeth grinding. Loyal, yes, but to what? So, the agent pressed. We can make this clean. Cooperate. And this doesn't have to go any further. Daniel almost laughed. Clean. Like this was about hygiene. Instead, he leaned back. If this is about cooperation, he said slowly, then explain why you had a file on Ashe since 2009. Explain why transmissions you claim to have recovered before Willow Creek's trial contain voices from calls that never should have existed. Explain why your camera, he jerked his chin toward the red diode in the corner, has been on since the moment we walked in, but no one's writing anything down. The room chilled. The agent didn't blink. Ash's whisper barely carried. They've already written it, haven't they? Daniel turned to her. Her lips trembled, but her eyes, those eyes weren't afraid anymore. They were resigned. She'd seen enough of the Hollow's blueprint to know. Rourke finally moved. He shoved back his chair, stood, hands flat on the table. That's enough. You're treating them like suspects when they came in under my guarantee. His voice cracked on the last word, the weight of loyalty straining against the cables of compromise. The agents didn't move. They didn't argue. They didn't need to. The silence was a system itself, leaning in, smothering. Daniel's thoughts spun like reels on fast-forward. He saw the paths branching. Fight from inside. Play along. Feed the Hollow's machine crumbs of what it expected. Build trust. Climb into their pipeline. Cut wires from the inside. Risk. Ash's name was already stamped in the ledger. Paper prisons killed slower, but they killed just as sure. Burn bridges. Rip out now. Flip the table. Drag Ashe through the door. Take Rourke with him or leave him bleeding faith in a system that was already owned. Risk. They wouldn't make it to the street before the SUVs sealed the exits. Every option ended in blood. The question was whose. Daniel pressed his palms to the table, felt the cold bite of steel. His voice came out quieter than he expected. You're not protecting us. You're processing us. No denial. Just the faintest twitch in the agent's jaw, confirmation hidden as discipline. Then the screen blinked alive again. The laptop, still on the table, lit up with a new file. Not opened by the agents. Not typed by human hands. A timestamp rolled across the screen. 41 minutes and 33 seconds. Then a voice. Daniel, if you're hearing this, it's because you've already chosen wrong. His stomach dropped. The voice was his own. Older, tired, threaded with a rasp that hadn't touched him yet. Ash's sighs snapped to him. Her lips parted. Rourke swore under his breath. The file kept playing. You don't have much time. They've marked her. They've marked you. And Rourke's still deciding whose side is on. You want to survive this. You'll need to do what I couldn't. You'll need to. Static. Then nothing. The file auto-closed. Vanished from the directory. The agents didn't flinch. Either they hadn't expected it, or they had, and it was just another test. Daniel's heart hammered so hard it shook his ribs. It wasn't just about inside-outside anymore. The Hollow wasn't reacting to them. It was anticipating them, writing their paths in advance, laying traps inside time itself. The agents finally spoke again, as if nothing had happened. Your statement, Joe. Now. Daniel inhaled through his teeth, looked at Ashe, who hadn't taken her eyes off him, looked at Rourke, whose silence was beginning to sound like betrayal, and then he made the second choice of the night. He leaned forward, voice steady, cold. Fine, I'll give you a statement, but it's not the one you expect. Because if the Hollow was already writing his story, then the only way to fight was to flip the script. The younger agent's voice was flat. Your statement, Joe. Now. Silence. The hum of the fluorescents filled the conference room ceiling. A clock on the far wall ticked too loud for its own good, every second like a nail tapped into wood. Daniel didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the grain of the table, on the faint scratches where other men had left their marks. The pause stretched long enough that one of the agents shifted in his chair, leather creaking. Beside him, Ash's hand twitched. She didn't speak, didn't dare, but her fingers closed around the fabric of his sleeve. Just enough pressure for him to feel it. When he glanced her way, her lips barely moved. Don't. Across the table, Rourke leaned forward, clearing his throat. He was trying too hard to look calm. Daniel knew him well enough to see the tell, the way his jaw flexed twice before he spoke. Danny, just give them something. Let's get this formalized. But there was something else. Not just nerves. Rourke's tone was off-key, a note bent sharp. Loyalty pulled in two directions. Daniel let the silence ride another beat. Then he lifted his head slowly, eyes locking on the younger agent. All right, he said, Voice measured. You want my statement. The agent gave the faintest nod. The recorder light on the table blinked steady red. Daniel leaned forward, resting his hands flat on the wood. For an instant, it looked like compliance. The whole room exhaled at once. Then he said it. My statement is this. A pause sharp enough to draw every eye. You've already lost control, and I'm not signing my name to your cover story. The air cracked. The younger agent's mouth went tight. The older one froze, pen hovering above his notepad. Rourke's chair scraped an inch back, his eyes cutting between Daniel and the suits with something that wasn't just fear anymore. Daniel sat back, spine straight, calm on the surface. But every nerve in his body was screaming the same thing. The Hollow is in the room, right now, listening. If the Hollow can write files before lives are even lived, then how many more cases have already been decided long before they reach a courtroom? This is Unheard Evidence, where the erased always find their voice. Don't let the next story vanish. Subscribe, share, and stay with us, because the evidence is only getting louder.